In today's lecture, we're going to work on continuing use of if statements, find out what we can do if something isn't true when we're testing an if statement, specifically learning how to use else along with if, and do some simple string manipulation. This project that we're going to use for the example is going to be a book order application. So it would be for use in a bookstore, maybe on campus, and the user, the customer, is going to get different pricing based on how many books they get. So if they get less than 5 books, they will get a 0% discount. If they get between 5 and 10 books, they're going to get a 10% discount. And if they get over 10 books, we'll give them a 15% discount. So it's really an application where there are multiple outcomes based on what the user input is going to be. We're also going to add some handling in place so that when the user types in something that's non-numeric, before all we could really do is zero that input out with try parse. But now we're going to be testing that input, and then possibly if it's bad input, we can communicate something back out to the user. I'm going to create an application called book order. And we're going to have 3 text boxes, 2 labels, and a button. Actually, several labels, one for each of our text boxes. So, get my controls on my form first, one of each of them, a button, a label, and a text box. I'm going to set all at the same time to have a larger font. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two and kind of size them up how I would have that look. I'm going to take this and I'm going to set the auto size of this to false, drag this out, and set the text alignment to right. And this will be my form label and my form field. Okay, now that I have these two set up how I want, and actually I'm going to select both of them. Up in my layout bar, I am going to align the middles, so that's looking good. And now I'm going to right click both of these, copy, and then right click and paste. And this way I get to keep the formatting. I don't have to do each of them because that can take a lot of time. And now right click, because that's still on my clipboard, right click paste and paste in. And now all I have to do is go into the text properties, and this first one is going to be first name, and then it takes care of all that formatting for me. And now all my labels, the right sides are going to line up, the left sides of here are going to line up, and it's going to look nice. Okay, this one will be last name, because we're going to track the user and we're going to output a message using their name. So this is last name, and then lastly, this one will be the number of books. These will be left aligned because it is text. This one has to be right aligned because it is going to be a numeric value. So in my text box properties, text align will go to right. And now, oops, we will have our submit button. So this will be submit. And I'll go back and I'll name all of my controls accordingly. This one will be btn submit. This will be txt first name, txt last name, and txt quantity. We could do txt number, but number can be kind of ambiguous because it is talking about a data type. Like a decimal or integer, so we're going to do quantity of books. Okay, we're going to skip the cancel and exit button for now. just to get some coding in here. One thing I probably do want to check if I go into View, Tab Order, and it looks like this is right, but I'm going to go through anyways. Excellent. As long as we are here inside of our designer, I'm going to set my access key for this. So put an ampersand in front of our S so that they can hold down Alt and S for submit. And also I want to do my accept button on my form. To there. What else do we need? Well, I think we also want some default input so that we don't have to keep typing. So our user is our customer rather is going to be John Smith. And then for quantity, let's start with 4. That way we don't have to put in our error handling just quite yet, and we can work on the actual logic of the program, and then we'll come back in and add those things later. For my title, we'll have it be book order, and this is looking good. Okay, now we are ready to write the code. Additionally, I think, now that I think about it, we should probably put something in here so that the user understands what the pricing scheme is. So we're not quite done with that yet. I'm going to put another label on the form here. And we're going to leave auto size on to true. And we'll put some code here and we'll say under 5 books equals no discount. I'm going to copy and paste that. We'll say 5 to 10 books, 10% discount, and then copy and paste again. More than 10 equals 15%. You want to be able to spell out to the users actually what's happening in their application. Otherwise it can be kind of disorienting at times. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Again, I missed some more parts here. We can do this. Label, we have to actually have something for the users to be able to see what the result is. So I will change the font on here to 14. And this one is going to be LBL message. Okay, now we are ready to go. I'm going to move this off to the left side because the message is actually going to go out this way, and we want to make sure we have enough room for it. First thing I want to do, double click for my form load code, and we're going to clear out that label. Okay, the rest of the code is all going to be in our button submit. Now, I clicked this earlier, so this is going to say button 1 click instead of BTN submit. But if you have BTN submit or this, it's the same thing either way. Visual Studio knows which event it has to fire. Okay, we'll do our pseudocode. Declare variables, get input from user. Here, we did calculations before. Now we have some logic in there as well. So to me, that's going to be the same thing. Calculations are in there. And now I'll put values to the user. Okay, now this is a great start, but our program is a little more complex than this. So we want to talk more about what goes in here. And this is where we come back to our labels that we have here. We're talking really about what the application is going to do. We're saying less than 5 books, no discount, between 5 and 10, 10% discount, and then between over 10 it's going to be 15%. So going back into my button click, and we'll talk more about this. in pseudocode. Now, what we want to say is the books, let's say quantity, we say is less than 5, discount equals 0%. For quantity between 5 and 10 equals 10%. Oops. Quantity, we can say greater than now, greater than 10, discount equals 15%. Now, we know how to do this if we just took one of these. So if we said, okay, if your quantity, we'd have that number in a variable. If it's less than 5, then we would set our discount to be 0%. But this is kind of where we get into trouble. You say, okay, well, if it's between 5 and 10, that's a different if statement. And the same thing with this one as well. We'd say, well, this one is greater than 10. So we know how to do separate if statements. And it is possible that we could do this with what we have now. We're going to do that first, and then we're also going to see why maybe that might be not the best way to do it. But it is possible, and we can handle this. This is going to get, it's going to get a little messy until we figure out that there is, in fact, a better way to do it. Okay. Now we have our logic in place, but what is the actual result going to be? What's the total that the customer is going to owe? So we'd say total equals quantity, and we haven't really set a price for our books. So let's say that the books are all $40 a piece. So we'll say quantity times $40, and then we have to give it a discount. So we'd say this would actually be our subtotal, and now our total would be subtotal minus, and then the actual discount, which is subtotal times the discount. Okay, so we figure out what the actual total is going to be first. In this case, we call it a subtotal because it's not the final one, which is the quantity of books times $40, and then it's that minus, and this is how we figure out the discount. So if we had 10% discount on $10, well, 10% off of $10 is $1. So we get that by saying 10 times 0.1. Now we have our price here. We've learned that that's actually supposed to be a constant because that stuff can change. So we'll say our constant will be book price, and we'll have to remember to declare that up top. Okay, I think we have everything that we need. So the first thing, let's take care of this constant. Remember, constants are declared after the class line right here. And so we will say const, this is going to be a double because it's money, and we'll say book price equals 40. Okay, now we can declare our variables. We need one for the quantity, one for the discount, one for the subtotal, and one for the total. So the first one, quantity is going to be a whole number, so we're going to say int quantity equals 0. Our discount is going to be a double, so DBL discount, because it's going to be a percentage. Our subtotal is going to be a double because it's going to be money, it's going to be currency. And then our final total is also going to be a double because it is currency. Okay, Let's go take a look at our form, because now we have to get the input. And we forgot to put something in for the name. And we can come back to that. To follow our process, though, we should probably talk about what we're going to declare those as. So let's do that as long as we're up here. Let's say string str first name equals, and we'll start it out, just be string.empty, and string str last name equals string.empty. We also are going to want another variable to hold the message that we're going to display out to the user. So we'll have that be string.empty as well. Okay, and that's going to come down here. But we're going to take care of all of our math first. We can't write the whole application all at once. So we're going to go after the math first. Okay, so first name, last name, great. Let's go after this one first, which is our quantity. So we know that we need some sort of integer value. We know also that potentially the user could enter in some bad input. So we have to do a try parse. So get input from user, we're going to say, it's a double, no, it's an integer, int32 dot try parse. We're going to get it out of txt quantity dot text, and we want it to go into int quantity. So we say out int quantity. Now after this line executes, if it's good input, this will be right in here. Okay, we can also get our name inputs as well, and this is easy. We haven't done a lot of this in a while because we've been concentrating so much on getting valid input, but this is easy. All we have to do is pull those values right out of the text boxes. So we can say str first name equals txt first name dot text. We don't have to do a try parse because it's a string. If they spell their name wrong, well, you know, that's the best we can do. We can't guess on how people's names should be spelled. So there's really no such thing as a try parse for a string. So txt last name dot text. And now we have everything off of our form. Going back into our button click. Let's take a look at how we can approach this. So if we think about it, we could split this off into 3 separate if statements. And so the first thing that we would go after is we can say, well, okay, I want to test to see if it's less than 5. So we can say if quantity, DBL quantity. Did we have DBL quantity? Int quantity, my mistake. Int quantity is less than 5. Then, and that's what the curly braces are, is saying, okay, if this is true, if int quantity is less than 5, and on our form we're starting it out as 4, if it's less than 5, execute this code. And what do we want to happen? Well, we want that discount to be 0. So this one's taken care of. Once this code runs, if it's less than 5, then we want your discount to be 0. What about the next one? Okay, if it's between 5 and 10. Well, we don't really know how to test to see if a number is between it. But what we can do is we can test to see if it's greater than 5. And we can also see if it's less than 10, but we could do it separately. So let's go for if int quantity is less than 10. So now we can say DBL discount equals 10%. Oops, it would just be 10. Alright, now we want to see, okay, is it greater than 10? If it's greater than 10, then set it to be 15. So int quantity is greater than 10, DBL discount equals 15. Now let's run it and actually see what happens. But, well, we should probably test this out and actually put some sort of output. We don't have any output yet. And what we can do is, now our program, it's not done yet. And so often what kind of happens is that you'll design your form, and you'll design your form with only the final result in mind. And so you get here and you go, okay, well, this has to output some sort of message that says exactly what the final result. So we would say John Smith owes $50. But we don't have that much code done yet. So what we can do instead is we need to kind of acknowledge that the program isn't done. It's not perfect, but we still have to have a way of trying to find out what it is that the program's doing and if it's doing it right. And right now, all we're going after is this discount. So it's okay for us to just show what it is that we're actually doing. So if we wanted to say txt quantity.text equals DBL discount dot toString. Now this doesn't have anything to do with our actual math problem, right? We're not doing a subtotal yet. We're not doing the grand total. We just want to see how our if statement works. So this kind of stuff is okay. By no means is it done, but we want to see if it's working or not. So let's take what we got and run it. And now we have 4, and we say this. Oh, and I changed my text box instead, so we're having trouble seeing what's actually going on. It should be LBL message. Okay, and let's see if this is right. Under 5 books, no discount, 5 to 10. 10. So something's not working right with our if statements, because I put in a 4 and I should have gotten a 0 here instead. So let's take a look. Well, and this is, you have to walk through this stuff sometimes too. So when I hit submit, I had 4 here. So we said, okay, is this true? Is 4 less than 5? Yes. So double discount is 0. So far so good. If 4 is less than 10, well, yeah, 4 is less than 10. So now double discount is 10. And then lastly, is 4 greater than 10? False. So then this whole thing gets skipped. So what happened is we tested to see if it was less than 5 first. That was true. And then we tested it to see if it was less than 10. Well, yeah, so think about it. 4 is less than 5, and it's also less than 10. So this kind of hijacked our program. So the order in which you ask these questions is actually important. And what we should have done is we should have tested to see if it was less than 10 first. It probably seems kind of backwards, but remember, all of this happens in sequence. So this code is going to happen before this code. And then lastly, this code is going to fire. So let's follow this again. Okay, let's say we got 4 here. Is 4 less than 10? Yes. Set the discount to 10. Is 4 less than 5? Well, yeah, is this less than 5? So now this is accurate. And then lastly, we would say, is 4 greater than 10? No. So it's going to stay at 0. So let's run it again. And we hit submit, and now the discount is 0. Let's check to see how it works for 5. Okay. Remember, if it's in between 5 and 10, then we want that discount to be 10. Let's try it for 10. Oh, now it's 0 again. That's weird. Let's try it for 11. Okay, well that worked. Well, what happened? Let's go through it in our code. So, we're doing it for 10 now. Is 10 less than 10? No, 10 is not less than 10. So this is going to be false. This code didn't fire. Is 10 less than 5? No. So this code isn't going to fire. Is 10 greater than 10? No, it's not. So this code won't fire either. So it's at 0 because right up top, when we declare double discount, that was 0, and none of these if statements worked. They all turned out to be false. So how can we catch this so that it will actually fire? Well, what do we have here? If quantity is between 5 and 10, that means that we want 10 to be part of this. So what we should say is, instead of just less than, we should say less than or equal to. And now this will be true for 10. Let's run it and see what happens. Alright, we're going to try for 4. You always want to check to make sure what worked before is still working now. So that's accurate. Let's do it for 10. That's at 10%. Excellent. And now 11 and 15. So it looks like we got this working right now. So it really does matter the order in which you ask these questions. If you ask them in a different order, you can get completely different input. Now, that's great, and like I said, this is a valid approach in that it works. And you know, the funny thing about code is that you always had to have that as your defense, is you can say, even if it's not the best code in the world, it does work. However, there's always room for improvement, and there are best ways to do that, because you want to give yourself room to be able to improve upon your code, and you want it to also be readable. Now, what we're doing here is we're essentially asking 3 separate questions. But we're asking these 3 questions every single time. So what we're doing is we're coming along and we're saying, is your number less than or equal to 10? Well, yes it is. And then you go along and someone asks, is it less than 5? And if we're working with the number 4, we'd say, well, yeah, 4 is less than 5. But then after that question, we're asking another one. Well, look at, if 4 is less than 5, and that's true, why would you ask if it's greater than 10? It would sound weird, right? You would say, okay, well, imagine if you were playing a game with someone where they had to guess what number you're thinking of. And you know, you're saying, oh, I'm thinking of a number between 1 and 10. And one of the questions you could say, well, is it less than 5? Yes. You would not go and ask if it's greater than 10 after that, because you already narrowed the results down. You've already figured out that if it's less than 5, it could be 1, 2, 3, or 4. You wouldn't ask if it's greater than 10, because none of those numbers are greater than 10. And that's kind of what we're doing here. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's not efficient. And you're asking the same questions no matter what. We might have gotten the number right the first time, but we keep asking, and it's just not an efficient way to write your code. So the nearest thing I can compare it to is if you were at a ice cream shop and you were ordering ice cream, and the person at the counter asked you what kind you wanted, and they would say, do you want chocolate ice cream? Maybe they have 3 kinds: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And if you said yes, great, that would be done. However, the way we have it, it would be the person at the counter saying, do you want chocolate? And you'd say yes. And they'd say, do you want vanilla? You'd say no. And then they'd keep asking you, do you want strawberry? And you'd say no. What are you doing? Didn't you hear me say I wanted chocolate? And that's kind of what we're doing here. We're not taking into account that maybe our question has already been answered successfully. And so what we want to do is we want to throw something in here called an else. And what an else does is it gives us the possibility of checking for an alternative. And you'll only ask that second question if the first one has turned out to be false. And so what we want to say is, we want to say if our quantity is less than 5, else if our quantity is less than 10, else if our quantity is greater than 10. And we have to do it in that specific order, because the first thing we're going to do is ask if our number is less than 5. Because all numbers 0, 1 through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are less than 10. We want to check to see if the number is 1, 2, 3, or 4 first. So the first thing we got to do is we got to move this block up to here. And then how do we chain these together? Well, we take this second if statement and we say else. And now this is our part of our if statement the first time. Putting this else directly after this one chains all of this together. These are now all part of the same if statement. And now we say this is an if else. So the first time it's going to come through and it's going to say if 4 is less than 5, then do this. If that's the case, if this has turned out to be true, then when this code is done, it will skip over this code completely and then move on to this. So we'd say, okay, are you less than 5? Yes. What if we did for a 10? Is 10 less than 5? No, it's not. Then we go on to the next one. Else if 10 is less than or equal to 10. Well, that's true. So then this code will execute. So then lastly, we want to chain this one on top of that, and we'll say else if, and then this is our last question. We'd say else if quantity is greater than 10. And that will take care of all of our other numbers. So we have all numbers less than 5, all numbers less than 10 for our set question, which would be 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10. And then lastly, with our else if, it will be everything else. Okay, let's run it and see what happens. Okay, less than 4, 0. Great. Let's do 6, which is greater than 5. We have at 10 there. Let's go up to 9. Also 10. Let's go up to 10. Great. Hit submit. Okay, we're looking good. And then let's do lastly 12. And then we have our 15%. Now, this last one here is actually not needed, because if you think about it, this one is testing for anything less than 5. This one is testing anything between 5 and including 10. And then what else do we have? Well, all other numbers are greater than 10, so actually we don't even have to ask. We can just say else. Because we do, are you less than 5? No. Are you less than 10? No. Well then, what else is there? It's everything else. So this is kind of like saying everything else. We can't say that because the code won't work, but what we're saying here is else, and that's all other outcomes. This was false, so now this is everything else that we have. But just to prove it to you that it's working, we got 4 here, great. We got 10, that's working, and then we can go to 229,000, and that's still inside of that other number range. So we have a nice if, else if, and else statement here. Okay. Well, let's move on to the rest of my code. And you know, one thing that I wish I would have put in here is clearing out this output on text change, because then I don't have to wonder if it's working or not. I get fresh input every time. So let's take care of that. On our text change, let's just clear out that label. Just to test this out, hit submit for 4, 10, that clears it out. So now I can see, yes, I am getting fresh input, and it's looking good. Okay, well now that we have that part done, let's take care of our math to actually get a real discount. And we're good at this stuff. We've been doing this a lot. So subtotal equals DBL quantity, int quantity, keep forgetting that, int quantity times book price. Our total will equal, this should be subtotal, our total is DBL total equals DBL subtotal minus DBL subtotal times discount. And now, where am I getting an error message? Does not exist. Did we not declare a DBL subtotal? I put a capital T in there. There we go. Case sensitive. Okay. And then now instead of doing the discount out to there, let's do the total out. We also probably want to put this in as currency. Okay. That doesn't seem right, does it? $160. Let's take a look. Or is it? So each of our books is $40. So 4 times 40. And it is right, 160. Let's try 6 books. Okay, that one certainly cannot be correct. Let's take a look here. We have 6 times 40. Oops. 6 times $40, which is 240. So we already know that 2,160 is probably inaccurate. Another thing that's interesting about this is when you use currency and you have a number that is in parentheses like this, this actually means that it's a negative number. So we'd end up having to pay John Smith negative $2,000. So something is definitely going wrong here. So when we're faced with this kind of issue, one thing that can help a lot is by trying to split out some of what's going on, because there's a lot of stuff going on here. We got a lot of numbers going around, and possibly outputting a couple more things to give us some visibility into what's going on might help figure out what the problem is. So what my approach would be, and this could actually benefit our application regardless, is to show maybe some more of the results. So we would see something like a label on what the discount is and possibly what the subtotal is as well. And you do see that in applications anyway. So I'm going to copy this one down, and I'm going to call this one, we'll say this is the subtotal, and then possibly display the discount as well. Okay, and then we'll pull down one of these labels since we have it already, and we can have this be LBL discount. And this one will be LBL subtotal. You won't always have your application perfect the first time. Some things will come up, some things will be an afterthought, or maybe your boss or your client will say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could have that? So it shouldn't totally kill your application to be able to add these things in. And I'll name this one LBL subtotal. Now we want to account for these, so on our form load and on our text change, we want to clear these out as well. Okay, and I'm going to copy these lines, scroll down, look for my on text change, and take care of that. Otherwise it's just going to get confusing. Okay, so on our submit we should populate these and see what is going on with that. So down here in our output, LBL discount dot text equals DBL discount dot toString. We don't want to display that as a currency because it's a percentage. LBL subtotal.text equals DBL subtotal.toString. Now let's run it again and see what is going on. Everything worked great for 4. Let's try it for 6. And this might be the problem. If you look, our discount is at 10. And so what is happening here I can get my calculator going, is I have 6 times 40, right? And then we did 10%, but what we're doing in our math is, times, 40 times 6 equals 240 times 10. And so we're getting 2,400, and then if you recall, it's subtracting that from what the previous value was, so we're getting negative 2,160. So we have to go in and we should change our discount rates to be our decimal point. So we're going to go 0.1 for 10%, because remember that's what percentage is. It's out of 100. Okay, let's try again. 4 is going to work just like before. 6 is now $204. The subtotal was 240. The discount was at 15%. But now we got that, and we don't want that, so we should probably fix how that looks as well. And we can use our toString on this one, and we can pass it P for percentage. So we have 0%, and now we go for 6, and now we have 15%, which is great. It even puts that number on there for us. Okay, I'm going to stop the lecture here. We will finish this application in the next lecture. This one's getting a little long, and we're going to take our results and we're going to use first name and last name. We'll display a total here, and then we'll have a nice message, and it's going to say John Smith owes $204.